Identify for me a foreign land where elaborate temples line the streets as they reach to the heavens. Awe fills you with its many wonders, but fear and suspicion reside in your stomach towards the people who seem to devote their lives to the gods inside. They walk into these temples, sacrificing everything for mystic objects that proclaim to bring happiness, beauty, health, or success, yet never quite do. Identify for me the strange land whose far distance is comfortable because its alien practices are of little influence or inconvenience to you. This exotic destination is New York, Toronto, with gods of Lululemon and McDonald's, mystic objects of phones that never leave one side, and televisions in living rooms, kitchens, basements, or bedrooms. I am a worshiper, and so are you. Often we get so consumed on our own way of life, we forget there's other ways to live. And instead of curiosity, we fear things we don't understand. In defense, societies are built to threaten the livelihood of the other, whether that be in our own capitalistic culture or a religion that has been manipulated into hate. Today, I want to examine a kind of peace that celebrates rather than assimilates differences through what I call the 3 E's for peace: empowerment, education, and empathy. Accompanying each one of the E's is a story that can show you how these concepts can be applied and how you can be a pivotal part of peace. The first E in the 3 E's for peace is empowerment. Empowerment, along with development, are interconnected concepts. Because of this, the West is the way of life for the enlightened, the epitome of civilization and the definition of progression. We encourage development and peace with those within our system, all adhering to the ultimate and divine God of greed. We reach out to other countries in the hope that they will advance into consumers just like us. But this development does not carry true empowerment. Empowerment is encouraging others to gain the confidence and acknowledge their skills and abilities, and giving people the opportunity to grow. In 2015, I spent 3 months in South Africa, where I learned about and saw the scarcity that afflicts that country and how it is rooted in prejudice and hate. I learned firsthand the difference between empowering those in need and enabling them. The true project was never the manual work set before us. Rather, it was to empower those who believed that their fate was determined by their state of poverty. One of the most humbling places I visited was Kaimundi. Kaimundi is the slum of the rich Afrikaner town of Stellenbosch, and it is the product of an apartheid. It is rows upon rows of steel shacks, garbage lining the streets, and a stench filling the air. Although it is not very picturesque, it is a place of beauty. I had the honor of leading a service project painting a preschool there. However, we weren't there to paint the preschool, help some needy people, or make ourselves feel good about doing something nice. We were there to encourage others to paint the school themselves, to make change in their own communities, and to show them that their insecurities don't define them. I found that no matter how many good intentions you have, the amount of money you give, or the amount of handouts you provide, it does very little if the people you are trying to help still feel as though they could do nothing. This is true in the north end of Winnipeg, East Hastings and Vancouver, and the small streets of my rural home. Conversations I had with the homeless were more meaningful than anything I could give them. And they gave me empowerment, humility, and relationships based on mutual learning and respect. I realized the Western way of life does not have it all together. The environment, freedom, and equality for all people are our sacrifice to the God of greed. If development for the rest of the world is to be just like us, the dirt in which we set the foundation of our temples on may become obsolete. Empowerment is more than progression. It is a relationship of mutual growth. In South Africa, I could not comprehend how such a large group of morally good people, mainly Christians, remained silent about the abuses of apartheid, blaming indifference on ignorance. But then I learned it was the policies that Canada used on its Indigenous that South Africa was modeling. My own history is not too much different than the Afrikaner. This brings us to the second E in the 3 E's for peace: education. Education uncovers truths about ourselves and others we don't want to learn. Because awareness is the stepping stone for change and moving past our comfort zone. Learning is like falling to an oblivion. We never know where new ideas will take us. Because empowerment makes us seek education, and when we are educated, we become empowered. Education transforms individuals, communities, and entire nations into realms of structural peace. Evidence of this can be found in Rwanda, a few years after the genocide. Here we find women from Hutu and Tutsi tribes organizing educational classes to become literate. They work together in agriculture, domestic, and cultural activities, and developed reconciliation through a common goal. These women are an example of the feasibility of peace to their children, community, and nation. The 3 E's for peace is not just a concept to learn. Its power is through application. It's a lifestyle where we learn about other cultures, histories, and customs to help us comprehend people we might fear, and help us to fight apathy, hate messages, and propaganda. As with the Hutu and Tutsi women, education establishes relationships that show that we are all flesh and blood, and there is no us versus them. I urge you to think deeply and differently about people you may fear, and remember, they're human just like you. This brings us to the last E in the 3 E's for peace: empathy. Empathy, along with empowerment, education, create perception between ethnic, gender, race, sexual orientation, and religious groups, which restores the humanness in people who become symbols of hate. Empathy questions concepts that are taught in childhood, critiques ideologies supported by governments, and pushes boundaries imposed by socialization. The ripples from individuals showing empathy can stop the spread of hatred on national levels. To see this, come with me to the land of Tajikistan, where conversations of poetry and philosophy between a warlord and a professor, whose friend was killed by the warlord, led to an unexpected friendship and peace. In John Paul Lederach's book, The Moral Imagination, he shares the story of the Inter-Tajiki War and how an Islamic militant group were brought into negotiation and rather using force to overpower them. A professor by the name of Abdul was commissioned by the government to talk to the warlord, and through many months of dialogue, they were able to empathize with each other, recognizing that both have families, feelings, and fears. Trust was built through this friendship, and it was this trust that convinced the warlord to talk about peace. The warlord feared assassination on the road to negotiations, but the professor, unable to promise safety, said, "I will go with you, side by side, and if you die, I will die." When the warlord arrived at the commission, he proclaimed, "I have not come because of your government. I've come to honor and respect this professor." It was not policies, nor ideologies, nor global pressures that convinced the warlord to talk about peace. It was friendship. Promises mean nothing if there is no form of camaraderie or respect between the counterparts of the agreement. Empathy creates relationships between enemies, and these human connections create peace. When the 3 E's for peace, empowerment, education, and empathy are applied, violence can be eliminated at its grassroots. This is a calling on individuals, communities, and nations to find the other and learn their real name. When we instill a certain way of life on others and confine them to our own set of boundaries, we lose the meaning of peace. It doesn't matter if you're an Islamic warlord, a Rwandan woman, a single mom in Kayamandi, a worshiper of many gods in many temples, or sitting in this room. You are a child of God. Jesus used the 3 E's in his ministry. He nurtured and taught a small group of people who are fishermen, tax collectors, and zealots to start a revolution that has forever changed the world. Our relationship with God is that of a mentor, empowering, educating, and empathizing with his followers. Because of this, instead of normality, we must become revolutionary. Instead of war, create peace. Instead of hate, show love. Our world is consumed by bloodshed, but it only takes the clasping of hands across barriers to show that peace is more powerful than the differences that divide us. I urge you to use the 3 E's, empowerment, empathy, and education, to form relationships that are despite differences. Although identities may contrast, humanity is an identity shared by all. Thank you.